Oliver, Neil, and McRae, welcome back to Sound Siren. I'm Xavier.
I'm Dylan. Welcome back. It's been a few months since we've uploaded on the channel, but after refreshing ourselves with a long off season, we're finally back for some more footy. Das, welcome as per usual. How have you boys been?
I've been pretty good. I just got back from my trip, got to see a lot of sport,
Yeah,
obviously a lot of basketball, which I'm a big fan of, and got to see the Chiefs win the Super Bowl as well, which was even better.
yeah,
It's been
sure.
very good.
Yeah, no, I've been all right. Had a pretty good summer. But yeah, just started to focus back in on Supercoach and footy the last couple of weeks after not touching it for probably 4 or 5 months. So I'm caught up now, but yeah, it was a pretty big break.
That's the problem when we're doing this virtually. You don't know when someone's going to chirp in or not. But we have a few things to talk about today. So we've got some player comparisons, some general questions from our followers on the AFL Supercoach page, and then just our thoughts in general. Now, where would you like to start off, boys?
I think we'll start off with the player versus players, right? Like the
Player versus
direct coach.
player. All right. So the first one that we have here, as per request, is Darcy Wilmot or Connor McKenna, both in the Brisbane back line at the moment. I think McKenna's a little bit more expensive, about 45k or so more.
For me, I've got I think Wilmot's better. Currently, both of them are actually in my team, but I think Wilmot has to be picked in everyone's team for 123k. I think he's probably going to play 23 games this year, and if you're for that price, you don't even need to score well to go up a stack. So, um, yeah, Wilmot for me.
Yeah, I think I've got both too. I'd say McKennan's probably going to score better, just considering I think he'll play a pretty good role off the half-back line, whereas I feel like Will might be more of a mid-sized lockdown.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's good to have both, but if I were to have to pick, I'd probably go McKenna, unless you really care about that extra 45k that much, then if you need that to upgrade you somewhere else that you need, then it could be worth going Wilmot instead.
Along similar lines, another teammate comparison we have for the Blues, Cowan or Cincotta. Is that how you pronounce it? Cincotta or Chincotta?
I should probably be the expert on this one, given I'm a Carlton fan, but I actually haven't watched any of our practice matches yet. Um, I've got one of them on tape. I'll probably watch this afternoon, but I probably would lean Cowan. I think he's more likely to play round one and play more games throughout the season. But I don't have either of these guys in my team at the moment, so we'll see if they get named. If they do, then maybe they slide in for a cheap price, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think we save there.
And now to a more quality comparison, we have the higher price guys, the premiums in the midfield. We'll start off with Clayton Oliver or Jack Steele.
I have Oliver. Um, he's probably M1 for me, I think, at this stage, even though Melbourne obviously have a really good midfield. I'm still tossing up. I've got Steele at M3. Um, I've been changing around with a few players, but I take Oliver in this one.
This is an interesting one for me. I think I've got Oliver, not Steele, but I do think Steele's nearly a better pick, but I don't think I want to go with it, if that makes sense. So I think I just want to just have Oliver in my team from start to finish and not have to worry about getting him in. But I feel like Steele at the moment is pretty underpriced for his quality. He's 600k, so I feel like he probably will end up in the 50 to 80, 650, 680. And like he will most likely be the Saints' best scorer. So I feel like he's a good pick. And I nearly would pick him over Clary, but I just want to have the security of Clary all season.
Yeah, especially with the captain option, I think you can double the with your M1. Obviously, you can double the difference. So
Mm.
we'll see.
Clayton Oliver involved in this comparison again. Him or Rory Laird?
I sort of gave it away before. I said I think Oliver will probably finish up at M1, so I'll take Oliver again. I think Laird's ceiling maybe not quite as high as Oliver. We saw, I think, last year or the year before, Oliver had a double hundred, and but I think Laird offers a level of consistency, particularly through the back end of last year, where it seemed like he was scoring 140 every week. So both are good options, but I lean Oliver.
I think I'm gonna work out a way to get Laird in. I'm probably gonna upgrade one of my 550k mids to get Laird in because yeah, I think practice match sort of just reminded me that he's just gonna score 130 to 160 pretty much every week, and why wouldn't you want that? We won't have as explosive of games as saying Oliver or Neil, but you can't say no to getting a consistent 130 a week.
And to the back line, Nick Dacos is 503,000 as a second year player. Now, this is a toss up because we saw in the practice match how he went, and we think that he might absorb the tag this year and it'll be a hefty focus from opposition sides. Jordan Ridley's about the same price, and he manufactured 120 or 115 about that in the practice game. They're about the same price. What do we think?
I'm gonna give this handball this one off to Darcy because I've had Ridley in my side all preseason, but I sort of pulled him out because I am a little bit worried about the role. I don't know if he's going to get kick-ins. I didn't get to watch the Essendon preseason game, so I don't know if he was taking them. I'm also a little worried that he ends up on the key forwards like he was a bit last year, and that's going to harm his scoring. But yeah, I'll let Darcy answer that one.
Yeah, I think with this comparison, I don't think I'm too convinced on either. It seems like Dacos is going to cop the tag most weeks, and he's shown that he doesn't necessarily have the ability to break those tags yet. And I think he will be tagged even playing halfback. I think Myron Xavier saying that he gets tagged in the midfield that is chugging halfback. I think it's at a point where teams will have a player on him halfback as well. He was playing halfback against the Hawks, and that's where he was getting tagged by McGuinness. So I think teams will put a bit of effort into him there.
How
So,
crazy? Oh, you go.
so I think that despite him being a pretty good player and only being 500k, second year Blues scare me a bit. Plus also the possibility of a tag. I just don't think he's a solid enough option. And with Ridley, I do have concerns about his role. I don't know if he's going to be taking off kick-ins or playing as much of an intercept or creator sort of play creation role. I think he will be more of a lockdown, but then again, he scored 128 on the weekend in a practice match, so it's pretty hard to make the call. If I had to pick, it'd be Ridley, but I think there are better options.
So how crazy do you think I would be if I had Ridley at D1 and Dacos at D2?
You could go really well or really badly. It seems like everyone's got Dacos at the moment. Well, a lot of people have Dacos at the moment. So a big point of difference at this point is not having him or having him. So like either way you have him and he's rubbish, you're sort of in the same boat as everyone. So then you look great not having him, but if you don't have him and he's good, then you're gonna need to get him in. So
The only thing I don't really feel that comfortable paying up the 600k for those top ones, the Stewart, Sicily, Dawson, Doherty, those kind of guys. Whereas I feel like for 100k cheaper, if Ridley could average 105 in a good role, then maybe he's a really really good option. Same goes for Dacos. So I think at the moment I have them at my D1 and D2. I've got 100k in my salary cap, so we'll see. Maybe I end up with one of those premiums, but we'll see.
I just remember a bit last season. I remember playing around with my premiums early on like that, trying to, go for someone 500k instead of the 600. So I don't think I started Oliver. I don't think I started Sicily or Stewart. And then I ended up having to get him in by halfway through the season, or I felt too far behind. So that's why I've sort of just gone into this year thinking I might as well just pay up for those premiums and then have them all year out rather than having to find a way to get them in when it's too late.
Bailey Humphrey or Toby McLean, both ranging from 178 to 184. Toby McLean's 178. Both have the dual switch ability for their role, so forward slash midfielder. One plays for Gold Coast, one for the Dogs. Das, I think you may have seen a little bit more of the Gold Coast game than Zave and I did. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not convinced with Humphreys. Gold Coast prospects tend to take a bit longer to come into fruition. You look at Elijah Hollins from a few years ago, Mac Andrew from last year, like these top 10 picks, like Rao was obviously good straight away, but injured. Noah Anderson didn't have a big first year in his first year, so it seemed like Gold Coast sort of a bit more of a slow burn with their top picks. So I'm not too keen on it. And I think me and Dave have had a few talks about McLean, and if he is in their Dogs best 22, then he'll be great. He'll average 80 as a player, and that's 178k. But it's just a matter of if he's in that best 22, which is hard to tell. But he did play a final last year, so that should be pretty telling. But yeah, just got to see round one, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll suss out another Gold Coast player who emerged from the weekend, had 32 disposals. But before we do, Ben Cunnington versus Jack Zeeble.
I'd probably go Jack Zeeble, but I also wouldn't pick either of these players.
I reckon I'd go Cunnington. I think he'll still be, maybe other than Davies Uniacke, I think he'll have the highest centre bounce attendance out of any of the North players, which can lead to good scores. He didn't look himself at the end of last season, but obviously gone through a lot before that. But if he is back in the form he was in 2 years ago, then I think for 440k and having him potentially as a forward is a steal. But I'm not convinced on Zeeble. I don't think he's in our best 22. And like even as a backman, I think we need to be playing younger guys down there rather than him. So I don't know if he'll play all year. But yeah.
I didn't actually realise Cunnington had forward eligibility.
Yeah.
That might actually change my answer.
Yeah.
McRae or Bontempelli?
This is the opposite to Cunnington and Zeeble. I think both of them are really, really good options. I'd probably go McRae, but again, I don't really mind.
I think I'm on the Bont train for this one. McRae's just having a bit of a downward trajectory the last few years. I don't see that necessarily changing. I think Dunkley being removed from the equation just helps Bont more than anything, rather than McRae. McRae always got those midfield minutes, whereas I think Bont won't be pushed out to forward like he was the last few years now that Dunkley's not there. So there's a bit more space in the midfield for him. So I think Bont could have a massive year. I would expect him to average 125.
And our final player comparison, unless you boys want to compare a couple, is Sean Darcy versus Jared Witts. I know a few people have been teetering between either of them.
I'd probably go Witts. Mainly, I think Darcy's probably arguably a better player. But I think Darcy's more injury prone. Plus, we spoke before we started filming. With Jackson coming, his role's more up in the air than Witz's is. We know Witts is going to get pretty much every single centre bounce, every single ruck contest for the Suns. But the one thing with Witts, I think his price is going to come down a fair bit. So because obviously last year was a career best year, and how confident I am that he's going to back that up is not very. So I'd probably go Witts, but we'll see.
Yeah, same as Xavier there. Witts is solo ruck in the Gold Coast outfit. They should have some good midfield around him now, so his hit out to advantage percentage should be pretty high. And yeah, Darcy's role is pretty hard to tell what's going to happen with Jackson. Even if Darcy plays only 50% in the ruck, I could see him only averaging around 100. So I think Witts should be in the 115 to 125 mark.
All right, quick fire segment, 10 seconds or less. We've got a limit because we're a little short on time. First up, Jordan De Goey.
I wouldn't get him for his price. There's better options. Plus, I don't think he's going to play that much midfield.
Das.
I think he'll have a career best year, but I don't know if Collingwood's current situation and system fits Supercoach at the moment.
Sam Flanders, the Gold Coast player I was alluding to before.
You go, Darcy.
I think he's in a weird price point. He's around 250, isn't he? So I think it's a bit too weird of a price point. I was thinking of upgrading McLean to him, but I don't think it's worth it.
Mitch Owen's about the same price, 121 on the weekend.
Yeah, I think similar, same. Like that's an odd price point, and probably rather just go the cheaper option and I don't get like a Phillips or even Ashcroft. I think
Mhm.
obviously people are going to have them, but yeah, I think they're going to be good enough to field, and then you don't really want to have that extra money on like an Owens on the bench. So
Das Tom Mitchell.
I'll take this one. I think we need to
10
spend more
seconds,
than
Dave. 10 seconds.
I think we need to spend more than 10 seconds on Tom Mitchell because I've had him in my team all year, and I don't understand. Everyone's telling me don't pick Tom Mitchell. He's going to have a bad role this year. He's going to have a bad role. How can he have a bad role? What's going to like? Then obviously Collingwood isn't going to play him forward or off the half back line. He's a
No.
midfielder, so he's going to play midfield minutes. And we know who Tom Mitchell is. He's going to come in. He's going to have 30 touches. He's going to lay a couple of tackles a game, and he's going to score 115 points. Like, I don't understand why people aren't picking him. They're like, oh, he played bad preseason games. In the actual preseason game, he had 28 touches.
Mm.
Why is everyone not picking Tom Mitchell? That's what I want to know.
I think there's a bit of a narrative around his efficiency, and probably tackles as well. I think he's like it was a narrative of Trelaw there for a couple of years. Well,
Mhm.
not like Trelaw. I think Trelaw pointed out saying they're all handballs. So people are a bit off on Mitchell in the sense that he's just a bit known for butchering his kicks and just handballing. So that doesn't necessarily lead to great Supercoach scores. But if he's racking up big numbers like he has in the past year, I think past years he'll be pretty good. But I don't know. It's just hard to tell. I agree with Xavier. He'll play a lot of midfield, but I just I don't know if he's one of the best options.
So I've got the Honeyball post here, and it's a quote from Scott Pendlebury. It said, it's not going to be the Tom Mitchell who goes out there and gets 35 or 40 possessions every week. It's going to be the Tom Mitchell who dominates around the football and is a beast around the ball, but also puts on pressure and tackles. Yeah. So the Tom Mitchell that is a beast around the football and a beast around the contest is going to be the Tom Mitchell that ends up getting 35 to 40 disposals. It's the same thing, except he also added that he's going to be tackling. So I don't know, I'm expecting 115 average, top six midfielders at 500k. Lock him in.
All right. I'll have to move on with a bit of haste now. A bit of false advertisement associated with this man in the past years. Isaac Heaney.
I probably wouldn't pick him. Again, I don't know how much midfield time he's going to get. I think Sydney's going to have a really good midfield this year, and I think there's some really good options in the forward line as well.
Yeah, he's on my never again list.
Jack Bowes.
I think that's a really good option. I think
Really?
he's going to be in Geelong's best 22, and we've seen before he can average like 90 plus. So um, I would definitely pick him. He's in my team right now.
Yeah, I like him.
Even though he's at that weird price category, 277.5.
No,
Uh,
I don't
at
mind
the
that
moment,
price.
yeah, at the moment, my
Thanks.
midfield's pretty much my backline's pretty much all mid prices. So
Okay.
I think I like that price in the backline as well.
Tanner Brun.
I like
Uh, you go, Daz. You go.
Yeah, I think I like him. I think he'll be a good role at Geelong, and he'll be one of their younger players. So I'll just have to play him, even if he's a bit out of form. But I reckon he could average 100 plus, which is pretty good at his price
Ooh.
point. But I just don't know if I'll be able to fit him in.
Yeah.
He's not in my team right now, and I probably wouldn't pick him. But if he's going to average 100 plus at 300k, then I think I don't have to.
Save Finn Callahan.
I'm actually not too sure. Again, I didn't get to watch the practice matches, but I think with the higher picks, they're probably not such bad options. But again, 244k in the midfield is a bit of an odd price point, so I'll probably stick with.
Yeah, no, I don't like the price point, but I think he'll have a great year. He could be a chance for rising star. So I think he'll have a great year, but not at that price point in the midfield for me.
Bit of an interesting request here. Liam Jones.
So
Not interesting
I've
at all.
been, I've been kind of against the Liam Jones pick, but again, he's in my team at this point in time.
Really?
Um,
Yeah.
he's 200k or 220k, and I think he's another one that's going to be an absolute lock to play every game. Like the Bulldogs really don't have that many great key defenders. I don't know. They're trying to change Bruce. They have Darcy, who's we don't know if he's going to play back or forward this year. But I think Liam Jones is going to play week in, week out, and maybe that job security is enough to just put him in my team. Although I don't think he's going to score that well.
Yeah, no, I think he's a good pick. He could be one of the best intercepting players. Maybe not intercepting, but sort of. I feel like he'll either be on the second or third best board. With probably Keith taking the main. So if that's the case, he could be a pretty good intercept player, which we know tends to show up well on Supercoach scores. So I think he could be a very good early pick and a good price grab. Like, wouldn't surprise me if you go 100 plus in the first 3 weeks, like one of the first 3 weeks, which we all know then will get us a good cash grab in 4 or 5 weeks' time. So I think I do quite like that.
Liam Stocker.
I like the Liam Stocker pick. If he's not in my team at the moment, but I would like him to be in my team. I think it's going to be either him or Liam Jones for that D5 spot. 216k. If he plays midfield, I think he'll score well, but I don't know how likely it is that he plays midfield.
Not for me. He hasn't really been able to prove himself at the top level yet.
Miles Bergman in the practice match seemed to be playing a lot of midfield, quite industrious, and he's 375k.
I wouldn't pick Miles Bergman. That's a pretty expensive price point. I think he can get better options. Also, we've seen when he plays in the past, we've seen that he can score well, but we also haven't seen that those good scores translate to good job security. Like we've seen him get dropped in the past after having good games, so it's a no for me.
Yeah, I'm with Dave.
Will Day around the same price category as Miles Bergman does.
See, this one's interesting. I've been tossing it up. It might need a bit longer than 10 seconds, but it looks like he's going to be probably their third, maybe fifth midfielder, like in their rotation sort of thing. And at that price point of 330k, I think, in the
360.
back line. What's that? 360? At that point in the back line, I think that it nearly could be my D3 or D4 there. I think if he's a regular part of the midfield, there's been a lot of hype around him for a few years. If he's a regular part of their midfield, averaging 80 to 90 in that back line, in that D4 spot at that price, just could be real handy for the early weeks there.
Yeah, he's not in my team at the moment, but I do really like the pick because I think Will Day is an excellent footballer. I think he's really, really good at halfback and in the midfield as well. And if he's getting more mid time, then I think he could score really well. The only thing is, I think for me, it's going to be either him or Elliot Yeo. And at the moment, I have Yeo, but if Will Day had had a huge score in the preseason game, then I probably would have picked him.
George Hewitt.
I wouldn't pick George Hewitt. He's going to score well just because he's that type of player. He's just going to win the football and win the hard football. But again, I think he's behind Cripps in our midfield rotation. I think Kennedy needs to play some midfield minutes.
And then
Walter, he comes back as well. But, yeah, and Adam Chera too. But I think he's going to score well. But for 600k, like I'd rather pick those Took Miller, Jack Steele, McRae, Bontempelli, Oliver, Laird, those type of guys. So I wouldn't pick him.
Just slightly off topic, Blake Acres will stay out on the wing, won't he? He won't really be an inside mid.
Yeah, for sure.
Das, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Xavier said. He's just a bit expensive.
Up next, Andy Brayshaw. Thoughts after his performance against Port Adelaide?
I think that's an interesting one. I personally won't do it because those players that I listed before, I think I said 5 or 6 of them. I just like them a little bit more, but I'm definitely not against the Brayshaw pick. He's the clear number one midfielder for Fremantle. He's going to be at every centre bounce. He's going to score well. So if you like it, then do it, but not for me.
I was very set on him early. My first two picked was Lachie Neale and then Andy Brayshaw. I was very set on Andy Brayshaw early, but I'm starting to sort of convince myself against it. I do think, he was so good last season, and I think he'll only be better this season. He very well could be a top 5 midfielder this year. But just unsure of him this early on. He could be not as good as hoped, and then you're paying 600K for a bit of a dud. So I think I'd rather pay the 600K for an absolute lock. But early on, I was very keen on him.
Now, the train of impetus at the moment is leaning towards Errol Goulden, 45 possessions and 3 goals. Sorry to spoil, Dave.
That's right. I think this is an interesting one because obviously I've seen a lot of teams that have him, but I don't, and I think it's a bit of a point of difference for me. I just think at 470K, you probably almost need to be a keeper, and I don't think that Goulden's probably going to be that. Obviously, Sydney have a lot of really good midfielders. We're going to see Mills in there. Going to see like Chad Warner, obviously from last year, Luke Parker. He's going to have to play some midfield minutes, and then we're going to see Heaney come in there for spurts. And I think Goulden will get a lot of midfield time, but I don't think it's going to be enough to put him into that upper echelon of midfielders. And I, there's no way I would pick him over Tom Mitchell. And for a similar price, I think it's Mitchell for me.
See, I think you've missed one point there, Zave. He's forward eligible. I think he
True.
will be top six forward, or not top six confirmed, but he'd be top 10 forward in terms of scoring. And I think he, at least early on, I reckon he'll get off to an absolute flyer. I'm pretty sure almost every season he's had a really good round one. Like we all remember that round one where he scored 140 in his debut or whatever it was. I think he's started off the season very well the last every season so far, which is this year's his third year, if I'm correct. So I think at this point, although Sydney does have a great midfield, I saw a stat just before that I think Parker got the most, Gordon got the second most, then it was Warner, and then it was a big drop off to the next sort of
Yeah, but Mills didn't
ones
play.
after. But then add Mills. But I still think if he's getting, the second or third most midfield time in Sydney, and he's kicked 3 goals, so he can be dangerous forward.
Would you pick, would you pick him over like a Connor Rosie or Taranto?
No, see I would only fit him in behind them.
And I think we have to, and I think we have to have Dunkley.
Yeah, he'd be an F4 at most for me, and that's where I've got him at the moment.
I'm glad you initiated the Callum Mills conversation, Zave, because that's up next. 6% ownership, which is quite criminal, I think, and definitely a pod that's starting to emerge.
Yeah, I think it's probably a similar boat to Brayshaw. Like he's going to be a really good pick and he's going to score really well, but I just prefer those other players. We know what they're going to do, like what their role's going to be, and they've had obviously a sustained period of excellence. So I'd pick those guys, but I'm not against Mills. I think with his tackling as well, he's like his floor, so is probably really high. Like he's going to get 10 tackles a game, which is an easy 40 points.
Yeah, I think he's a good pick, but I think last season he didn't. He had a couple really big games, but he tended to be around like 100 to 115, which sort of puts people off a little bit rather than the big flashier sort of players always going for 140s.
Mm-hmm.
So
At 214 though.
Huh?
He did have a 214 point performance.
Yeah, no, I do remember him having a big game, but I mean, it just wasn't like consistently big. So I think that's what sort of turned people off from picking him early. But he's going to score well. So if you're willing to miss out on having someone like an Oliver Bont or something like that, he could be a good option to start with because he's going to score well and no one's going to have him. So you could win your league matches.
All right, we have a couple of names left just winding down on the list, so I'll just get a yes, no for these ones. They aren't as impactful as others may be. Sam Draper?
No.
Charlie Constable?
If he plays, definitely.
Jake Lloyd?
This is the same boat as Ridley. But if he's going to take kick-ins, he's going to score really well. I think he's had 3 seasons where he's averaged over 120.
Mm-hmm.
And he might be in my D1 spot at some stage as well.
Okay.
So Ollie Florent was taking kickouts. I know this is your questions that I put in. Ollie Florent was taking kickouts for Sydney apparently. So if Lloyd's not taking kickouts, I wouldn't look at him.
And finally, Asava Radaglia.
I've been thinking no because I don't think he's that good at football. But um, at the moment, I'm leaning yes. For a couple of reasons. The ruck eligibility, I think, could be really helpful. I think English and Marshall have both had injury problems in the past, and if you can get him with like the loop at R3 and F7, then I think that could be really handy. I also think with like his intercepting capabilities, he could, similar to what we were talking about Liam Jones before, he could have one really big game that just helps his cash generation really quickly, and then you can get him out of your team. So I think that would be handy, but I'm a big no for starting him at R2. I don't think that's very smart.
Yeah, I don't rate his job security. I think he'll probably play the first 6 weeks with Jack Henry out, but I don't know. There's a reason why he hasn't been a consistent player for them for the last 4 years when he's been on their list. So I think that's just going to continue.
But I think 6 weeks is probably enough to get him in and out of your team. That's three price rises. So if he has one really good score somewhere in there, you're probably looking at close to 100k cash gen, or a little over even. So I think it isn't the worst pick.
On a broader scale now, we have general questions. First one, for example, is it a worry to have too many premiums from the same team? Off the top of my head, I'm thinking not necessarily premiums, but North Melbourne, you've got the likes of Drury, Phillips, and then Cunnington kicks in as well. Some people are sticking with Zeeble. Or St Kilda, you have Caulfield, Clark for cheap, Stocker, and then there's Sinclair and Steele as well.
I don't think it's a problem. If they're all in the same position, maybe, because
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes an issue come the buy rounds. But if it's after the buy rounds, I don't see any problem with it. I think back to last year, um,
Bulldogs.
if it was if it was the ideal team, you would have had the Bond, you would have had McRae, you would have had Libba
Lord.
in there. There was like four or five premiums that would have been in the best 22 players. So no, I don't think it's an issue.
Yeah, I think it's an issue if they're competing for spots, sort of thing. So yeah, maybe if they are in the same position.
Yeah.
Like for the Bulldogs last year, you could get away with it because they just seem to have so many players score highly. But I think like in a situation like Collingwood, you would want to have Dacos, Tagoe, Mitchell, maybe Darcy Cameron. I feel like you get pretty stuffed there
Mm-hmm.
because all it takes is a down game from Collingwood, and you've just got 4 players there that are all scoring around the 80 mark or below. So I think you got to be careful in some situations like that. Like there's probably 4 or 5 Collingwood players, like you can include Crisp too, in that very well could end up having games below 80, and if you've got 4 or 5 of them, then you're stuffed. But yeah, I don't know. It depends. The good scorer is going to score well. Like the established scorer is going to score well, but I think if you go for, there wouldn't be too many teams at the moment that I'd be confident with 3 or 4 players getting 100 plus a game.
But obviously, we're talking about just premiums, but if we're talking about players, period, like Dylan was before, I've got 5 Brisbane players in my team right now, and I think you boys probably have all 5 of them as well in McKenna, Wilmot, Lockie Neal, Ashcroft, and Josh Dunkley. So I think all 5 of those are borderline lock.
So I'm in the same position now. I've got all 5 players, but I think it's just a bit different because you'd only really say that Neil and Dunkley are the only premiums there. So I think 2 premiums there is fine. Ashcroft's a lock to get midfield minutes. He looks very dangerous. McKenna and Wilmot, they're just cheap players that are likely to play most games and score potentially well. So I think that's an issue. I don't mind having that many players from the one team if they're all going to get games, or sort of if you're going for the cheap ones that like to get games. So like even like a North Melbourne, if we went like a hard rebuild this year and played all our young kids, then there'd be 6 or 7 players. I wouldn't mind if you had 6 or 7 players because they could very well all be rookies.
Mhm.
Um, so like playing rookies early in the season is gold pretty much. So it's not a bad thing having that many players, but I'd say premiums, especially premiums that are all playing in like the midfield or 2 or 3 in the forward line, I just wouldn't go there. Like I wouldn't want to have you wouldn't want to have Tom Hawkins, Jeremy Cameron, and Tyson Stengel because I feel like it's bound for one of them to have a really average game.
And next up, we could isolate Ruckman, the opening two Ruckman as not a problem in itself, but a hot topic. I'll go with the backup Ruckman at the moment. I feel like a lot of people have set with Madden, although there's injury concern as well.
I think Mick Andrews' the pick there. Tom Hickey's out for at least the first month or so. So you're going to have a Mick Andrew
Yeah,
play. So he's at 123K. It would be good cash generation. And the ruck bench has been gold the last few seasons for cash gen. Had the likes of Matt Flynn, Bruce, Riley O'Brien a few years back. There's just been a couple of picks like that have just really gotten you a lot of cash off the bench.
yeah, I think the ruck role is excellent, and if you've got a player that's 120K and they're definitely going to play, they're going to score like 80 a week, even if they're horrible at football. Like because the hitouts are worth points, they're going to get tackles, and they just get put at every CBA. So um, it's Mick Andrew for me.
Mid prices, plenty of them to select this year, from Richmond to West Coast, Sheed and Yo, or Hopper and Taranto. A few others in the mix as well. Who have you got?
Taranto's premium.
Sorry, not Taranto, a Hopper, I meant to say. And there's a few others as well, around 300k to 400k.
And so I'm usually against mid prices, but this year I've got a lot of them. So I've got, I think Hopper needs to be in everyone's team. He's just about the first player picked. For 330K, I think he can average 100 this year. He's going to, obviously, for Richmond, he's going to be in their midfield mix almost all the time. I've also got Elliot Yo. If he plays midfield, he's going to score well. Even if he plays halfback, we've seen him play that role before and play really well. I've got Nat Fife. I think you boys maybe don't have him, but I'm pretty high on Fife. A lot of people aren't, but I still think he's, even at this stage of his career, I think he can score really well. I've got Jack Bowes as well. I think if he plays, he's going to be really good too.
I think I've got 5 in my team at the moment, but that's at F5 and I'm not too thrilled with that. So I'm thinking of probably dropping him. But he scored 90 on the weekend. I didn't watch that game, so not sure if he played much midfield, but scoring 90 at that price, you got to take it. But yeah, I might keep him, I might not. I'm not too sure yet.
Just looking at my
Yeah,
back.
I think
Sorry, save you go.
we're going to see Brayshaw and Sarong, and then I think O'Meara as well are all going to get a lot of midfield time. But like Fremantle lost David Mundy, who was playing a lot of midfield. Um, yeah, and Brody as well. Fremantle lost David Mundy though, who was playing a lot of midfield last year, and like Nat Fife is one of the best midfielders we've seen in our generation, like probably top five that like of the last 10 years. And I think when you're that good a player, there's going to be time. Like no coach in their right mind is going to say Nat Fife has a blanket ban on playing midfield. Like
No.
if he plays forward 100% of the time, I think he can still average like 85. But to say that he's not going to play any midfield, I think is a stretch. Like obviously he's not going to play that much, but I think we're still going to see him go to like 4 or 5 centre bounces a game, and I still think he can average like 100 and get in at F6. So, and for to be a potential keeper at 313K, I think, yeah, I'm definitely picking him.
And as I was mentioning, just looking at my back line, of course, I don't have McKenna at the moment. Ginby's around the same price, and it takes us to the rookies who are a lock. Would he be one of them? Played extremely well in the practice game.
I'll just quickly run through my locks for rookies. You guys can add any of yours or contend with any of mine, but I think it's just got to go Ginby. McKenna's not a rookie, but I think rookie price got to have him. Wilmot, Constable if named, then Ashcroft got to have him. I think Alan Davey looked really good for Essendon. I think maybe he's not a lock, but considering quite highly. Will Phillips is going to get a lot of midfield time for North Melbourne. He's not a rookie again, but 150K. He's going to get a lot of time for North Melbourne in the midfield. And, time in midfield is disposable, so he should average 80 or so. And then I'd say probably other than Mick Andrew, definitely Mick Andrew. I'd say the only other lock I'd have would be Mateus Philippou.
Okay, yep.
And so this is an interesting one. There's so many people that aren't picking this guy, but he's one of the first ones that I picked. And I think both of you guys don't have him. I've seen people picking Josh Bruce over him. But Ben King, for me, I think has to be picked. He's 170K, and there's no world year Ben King isn't in Gold Coast best 22. Is if he stays fit, which other than this injury, he hasn't really had a problem with in the past. He's gonna average probably 75 ish. Yeah,
Just hit
and
a
but he's gonna play
75.
every game.
I
Or
reckon
even if
average
he
around
averages
60.
less, like if he averages 65, like he's still going to play 23 games and go up in price for 170K to have 100% job security, absolute lock. I think I'm definitely going to pick him, and I think everyone else probably should as well.
Sheasel and Oscar Allen, Dallas.
I just don't think Shoes will be able to produce enough at that price. He's just about 200K. And Oscar Allen is pretty much the same as Ben King, but I just think I'd rather take not a punt, but take a bit more of a risk and go for a player 80K cheaper or 100K cheaper. Have them on my bench because worst case they get dropped for a couple of games, or I can just switch them to another rookie or upgrade them. Now they've got the 36 trades, but yeah, I think I'd rather just give myself an extra 80K to use on making sure I've got those old Uber premiums,
Mhm.
rather than have Oscar Allen over a 120K rookie that's named right.
I have Oscar Allen in my team right now for all the same reasons as I have Ben King. He's going to play every game if he's healthy for West Coast, and Um, I think I prefer the Ben King option, just because he is, I think, almost 30K cheaper, but I think both of them are really good options.
But do you agree that if there was 7 or 8 120K forwards named and some of them looked great, or had a lot of hype around them, you'd rather them? Because I feel like between Oscar Allen at a 120K forward is
Mm-hmm.
getting you from a Brayshaw to a Oliver Laird. I think like it's better to allocate that 90K that so you can absolutely get those premiums you want to keep the whole season rather than going halfway and getting a
Mm.
Luke Davies
But
Juniaki.
how many 120K forwards do we think are realistically a round one chance though?
I think Alwyn Davey should be. Fergus Green, I think most likely will be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
every season there's a fair few debutants for each team, but there's a few more. I just can't think of them at the moment. But
Sin
I reckon
hasn't
that
really been a prominent name, has he?
who's that?
Josh Sin.
Yeah, no, he hasn't had much hype around him, and he hasn't played any preseason matches.
Van
Um,
Ryn as well.
but yeah, I think there'll be 5 to 6 named that I'd rather take.
I think a lot of the cheaper ones, like the St Kilda one, Mateus Philippou, I think, and like Sheasel, or however you pronounce it, from North, and Radagalier. These guys are all like 170K as well, and I'm seeing a lot of people pick them. And for 30K more, I'd probably rather Allen just for the job security. There's no way he's going to get dropped at any point this year, and um, yeah, I'd quite like Oscar Allen.
Yep. All right, to pods and nearly closing out today, we have a few: Jed Anderson, Elijah Hollins, Cam Guthrie, or Matt Crouch as possibilities.
If I had to pick one of them, I would say Matt Crouch. He had issues last year. He got dropped a bunch of times, but one thing we know about him is he's going to score really well and he's going to find a lot of the football. And he could average 105, 110 if he plays, but I don't know that he does.
Elijah Hollins excites me a little bit. Jed Anderson, I don't know, he was all right on North, but he's never really scored well. And he's not like ridiculously cheap,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think he'll score well enough. Yeah, I don't know, there's a couple of point differences, but at this point, Supercoach is so well publicized that any decent POD becomes no longer a POD within a week or so. Like, say what Gould maybe
Mhm.
had 2 or 3% ownership last week, you'll have 30% this week. So yeah.
And then someone else has written here Sam Berry at M5, which I'm hoping isn't a genuine suggestion. I don't know about you. I'm not too keen
No,
on it.
I've seen.
480k.
I think even I think George Supercoach on YouTube. I think even he has Samberry at M5.
Yeah.
I personally wouldn't do it. I think he's actually an Adelaide supporter, George, but I wouldn't do it. But I don't know. He seems pretty confident that he's going to average 100 this year, and I don't know if he does, then maybe he's a good pick.
Yeah.
His floor is just really high. He's very high volume tackler.
Mm. Yeah.
He's quite a good tackler. He probably is one of the best in the league. And I think if you can just, have 20 to 25 touches a game along with that, most of them probably contested, he's bound to score well. But for me, he's not someone I want to go out on a limb for and pick. You know, such a valuable spot, M5, that's,
Yeah.
that could be a Hopper or it could be a McRae Bontempelli.
It
Like,
could be
depends how deep
Caleb
you want to
Sarong,
go.
who I have at the moment. I know it's probably a little bit of a risk. I just think
It's
that
a Dylan pick.
it is a Dylan pick, but it's not because I went out on a limb to select him. I had enough cash and I thought we'll try it out, but that could definitely change before the season starts. So nothing
So
too wild yet.
do you think Caleb Sarong will be better than Brayshaw or Brody this year?
Was that to me or Zave?
Are you, Dylan?
He could very well be. He had 32 possessions in the practice match.
Hmm.
I think he should be up
This is where
by 50k at least. He's a star.
I'm losing my mind. Yeah, Sarong is 500k and Mitchell is 520k. Why are we not picking Mitchell? For
Well, he did have
20k,
20k
we're
in the
picking a
bank.
Brownlow medalist that's going to have one of the best roles in the entire AFL.
That's true.
I don't.
I didn't
I
have
think
20k, Zave. I have 5k in the bank. So unless I downgrade a Philippou or a Phillips, there's really nothing for me to go for. What do we think about Mackenzie for Hawthorn?
No, yeah, he looks pretty good, but he's 180k. So I've got him in my team, but I think I very well could have just moved into a 120k player, and you know
Yeah.
he'll probably score 70s or 80s, which is valuable as a rookie, but I don't know. It's hard to tell at this point.
So is it worth for me to downgrade him and then
You need to
up
wait and
on
see who
Mitchell or
gets
something?
picked round one. That'd be a night before round one call.
Okay, no, that's fair. Blake Drury, we're not too eager on, are we? Okay.
I don't think he'll play.
Anything else, Zave, Das? Any other questions? We've gone through the list, the followers' requests. Now it's just up to our personal take if anyone wants to ask anything, feedback from the
my
room.
personal take is I think I'm going to have a really good year this year. I haven't paid that much attention to like preseason and stuff compared to what I have in the past, but I'm seeing so many people that aren't picking Fife, so many people that aren't picking Ben King, and so many people that aren't picking Tom Mitchell. They're my first three picked players, so I think if people aren't going to pick them, people are going to lose to me often.
We always love a humble save. Well, that will do for today. We'll keep this up regularly. We'll do another Supercoach episode per week. We did have a big off season. We do apologise for the break in between, but be excited for this year. We have our first interview with an AFL player coming up. That'll be here next week. Won't disclose who just yet.
Melbourne superstar.
It is a North Melbourne player. We'll look forward to that. And if you have any other suggestions or requests, just let us know in the comments or on our Instagram page at AFL Supercoach or at sts.podcast, where Zave runs all the behind the scenes there. But that does it for this week. Thanks for joining me, boys. Glad to be back.
Yep,
Right.
it's good.
All right, take it easy. Good luck with all the Supercoach this year, and we'll reveal the teams in a few weeks. Catch you later.